This is a story about the radio, about that period of time in the late 60s, freeform radio. And I don't think it needs much more um, explanation than that. It's called The Ballad of the Sandman. When the broadcast room's a living tomb of cracked acoustic tiles and you're left alone with your microphone and your playlist and your dials, and the hands upon the studio clock pass midnight and creep towards 1, it's time to take the air once more, and the graveyard shift's begun. The day shift and the engineers have all left hours ago. You close the heavy soundproof door and set your board aglow. Cue the first 2 records up, settle in your chair, uncap and snap the transmit switch, and you're on the air. There's magic in the radio, enchantment in the ether, a power born of mind and brain and yet a part of neither. A power to be reckoned not in kilowatts or joules, Joules, a means to let a single voice touch 500,000 souls. But when you work that graveyard shift from 1 a.m. to 5, you start to doubt that anyone's out there or alive. The halls are lifeless, the phone is dead. And there's nothing quite so lonely as to call with kilowatts and in reply hear silence only. They usually stick the rookie jocks in the lonely graveyard slot, but me, I broadcast nights by choice. I like that shift a lot. Because when I get the lonelies, as I do from time to time, I recall the Sandman's final show of 1969. 1960s radio was awful at its best. I grew up with Cousin Brucey and the Wolfman and the rest, and between the fast talk and the hype and the acne lotion jingle and station breaks with sound effects, they'd maybe play a single. But that was all there was back then, and that was all we had. And nostalgia finds a way to sift the good from all the bad. And so intertwined was radio with fond scenes of my youth that it's tinted with a rosy glow that overlays the truth. Oh, and summer parties at the beach and every high school date, those midnight drives in my dad's olds and studying till late. They're all movies in my memory. And behind them, I still hear the Beach Boys and the Beatles and the Motown, oh, so clear to the counterpoint of DJ hype and ads for wrangled beer. But then in '67, FM burst upon the scene. What once played only Bach and Brahms became a rock fan's dream. Between the sparse commercials, they played 3 songs in a row. Album cuts and full-length versions, played in stereo, and gone is all that mile-a-minute brainless DJ chatter and singing station breaks and other oral fecal matter. Instead, these guys with wit and charm told what they had to tell and spoke as if they thought that I might have some brains as well. I got to know them all by voice that summer. And come fall, I'd hung around the station till I came to know them all. Bill Clancy in the morning slot, Aunt Stacy, Charlie West, and the Sandman. He was different and apart from all the rest. Paul Sandman did the overnights. He had a special style. He was older than the others, been around a while. He'd segue different album cuts in a stream of consciousness around, do theme sets, live concert tapes. Boy, he made listening fun. And though he must have known my name, he always called me Kid. But he let me watch him work and explain the things he did. And once or twice, he snuck me in the studio late at night and let me cue the tapes and records up to my delight till I wandered back home, bleary-eyed as it was getting light. And while the record spun, he sat and talked of days gone by when radio was younger, and so was he, so was I. While round his lonely Kansas farmhouse, snowdrifts blew and curled, the radio was a living color window on the world, he said. There was magic in the radio, enchantment in the ether, a power born of mind and brain and yet a part of neither, a way to take you miles and years by means unknown to science. Nah, but it's since become a jukebox, nothing more than an appliance. I can tell you got the itch, kid. You'd like to be a jock. Give it up. Magic's gone. There's nothing left but schlock. You deal with all the crazies and the drugged out suicide calls, and the sponsor and the FCC have got you by the throat. And programming tells you what to play. They take no denying. You read copy advertising, crap you'd never think of buying. The hours are long. The pay is squat. Vacations. But then the cut would end, and he'd face the mic and weave magic once again. Sure enough, he read me right. Guess he could recognize a little of his own obsession shining from my eyes. And when I left for school that fall in higher education, my first step was to make a beeline for the radio station. Throughout my freshman year, I learned the ropes and paid my dues. I engineered, did commercials, swept, read the news. By the time I was a sophomore, I'd earned the weekly show. I was on the graveyard shift, but I was on the radio. And I learned Paul Sandman was a name that every DJ knew. The trade rags did his story. He got a piece of Newsweek too. And sometimes playing album sides from my deserted station, I'd tune in his show on my headphones just for inspiration. And so it was on New Year's Eve of 1969. School was out, they'd all gone home. Station was all mine. Yep, there was I, the rookie jock, left holding down the fort, well stocked with day-old pizza pie and coffee by the quart. They had me work a triple shift from 8 p.m. to 8 playing records no one listened to while partying till late. And CBS had hooked lines across the country to Times Square. And at midnight, we'd switch over to a live broadcast from there to hear the famous ball come down and ring in the new year. By 11:10, it got so dead you just could not believe. Who the hell's listening to the radio New Year's Eve? So I queued up Tommy. That would kill a half an hour of show. Kicked off my shoes, plugged in my phones, tuned in the Sandman show. Something's different. Something's wrong. I knew right off the bat. He's playing straight top 40. His voice is sounding flat. There's dead air between his cuts. His spots all run too long. Inside of 15 minutes, I knew something there was wrong. I let him start a record and dialed up his private line. He answered with his call letters, and I replied with mine. Oh, hiya, kid. Hey, tell me, ain't you got a better way to spend your New Year's Eve with some busted down DJ? Well, heck no, I'm on the air myself. I got lots of time, and I listen to your show because it's better far than mine. But tell me, Sandman, what's with you? Is everything all right? It seems to me if you're somewhat off your stride tonight. Everything is not all right, he answered with a frown. The Arbitron reports came out, and our ratings have gone down. And Harry Stein in programming is determined that the way to get the ratings back on top is dictate what I play. So here I sit with list in hand that says at 10:15 I should play the Righteous Brothers, followed by the Cream, and then a public service spot, and then some Moby Grape. They don't need a DJ. They can put this crap on tape. It's December 31st. The year is coming to an end, and with it ends a decade. And an era too, my friend. And in 27 minutes, I'll switch over to Times Square. But when I return in 70, you tune in if you care to hear how good the radio could be. If it would dare. He broke off at that point to cue up another platter, and I said goodbye. The Who were almost finished for that matter. And exactly 27 minutes later, more or less, on cue, I flipped the switch to hook us in with CBS. And while thousands in New York bade fond farewell to 69, and Guy Lombardo and his orchestra played Old Lang Syne, I raised my slice of pizza in salute to the new year, and once more to the Sandman at the end of his career. When the network show was over with, I went back on mic. I did some inane comment about the future and the like, did a station break, queued a record up, and then tuned my headphones in and turned the Sandman in again. Welcome, he began, to 1970 radio. You've noticed in the past a certain blandness to this show. Seems Harry Stein's determined what your music taste should be. Well, fuck you, Mr. Harry Stein. And fuck the FCC. I've had my fill of radio. This here's my final hour, but the door's locked and bolted and I'm on internal. I suppose they'll find a way to get me out eventually. But until then, you'll see how good the radio could be. And then the music started. And the magic came on strong, and how the sequence brought to light a hidden meaning to each song. And where he got those tapes and records, I'll never know. Old favorites I'd forgotten, live recordings from some show. You can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant, and you can't always get what you want. Where have all the flowers gone? Do run, 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 do. The Beatles singing German, Dixieland on 78, Benny Goodman, Walter Carlos, Bessie Smith, The Roommates. This is more than playing records. This is genius. This is art. And this is something altered here, and damn, I'll do my part. I open the equipment cart and stowed beneath the board and rummage through the junk there till I find the proper cord, patch headphone out to preamp in, adjust the input power, and the Sandman show gets relayed out through our antenna tower. I reach out to the telephone, dial WBVA, and it's answered there by Sharon Smith, their overnight DJ. Hey, Sharon, Paul Sandman's just flipped Harry Stein the Bird, putting out the best damn radio you've ever heard. And there's a brotherhood amongst the radio voices of the night. They stand behind a fellow jock. They see he's in a fight. Sharon had to listen but a moment, then was gone to find a patch cord of her own to send the Sandman on. And then the phones, that long I thought were dead, began to light as the calls came in from miles around from listeners in the night. Whence comes this wondrous music, they would ask. And I would smile. And how come I pick it up on every station of the dial? And through the night, the signal spread from station onto station as the CJ sent the Sandman and his magic crossed the nation, till Sharon called me, laughing, shouting like she was on fire, saying, listen, someone's put the Sandman on the network wire. Oh, that's right. The lines to New York were still hooked nationwide. I flipped the switch to listen in and laughed until I cried. The Sandman must have reached some hero New York engineer, put him on the wire for the whole damn world to hear. There was magic in the air that night, enchantment in the ether, a power born of craft and pride, and so much more than either. And all across the country sat the overnight hardcore and shared the Sandman's magic, till at 20 after 4, he stopped to say goodbye as they were breaking down the door. New Year's Day dawned cold and gray with just a touch of sleet, and many a jock by 9 o'clock found himself on the street. Me, I came off cheap. A reprimand was all I got. But New Year's night, a new voice broadcast from the Sandman slot. And since that night, the radio's become my occupation. I'm now a big shot DJ at a major FM station. But when the hours start to drag and the night's going slow, I cue up an album side, crank up my headphone stereo, and tune into the Sandman, now on satellite radio. And when the broadcast room's a living tomb of cracked acoustic tiles, and you're left alone with your microphone and your playlist and your dials, though the airwaves seem a graveyard of lifeless whitened bone, there's always someone listening in, and you really